Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. We're back to quantum theory, which means we're going to start getting really confused because there's a lot to be confused about where quantum mechanics and quantum theory are concerned, even though they touch heavily on all of the things we talk about here on the program. But Joel and I were just talking before we got started about how confusing this stuff can be. I reminded him of something he already knew, the quote from the philosopher and physicist in some ways, philosophical physicist, Niels Bohr, who was one of the early contributors to the conversation about quantum mechanics, basically saying that quantum mechanics, if you think you understand it, then you don't understand it. And Joel, you were mentioning in reply to me pointing that out, that you understand it even less than you did yesterday.
Yes. It's one of those things I sort of wish I never studied because it's as I was saying, as he's saying, as he's mentioning, it's just so much of it is unbelievable. And you see it, and you see the facts, and you see it take place. While on one hand, a lot of it, to me, some of this is the science of the law of attraction. I think quantum theory suggests there's science behind what we believe in the law of attraction.
Sure.
But one of the things that I find fascinating right now, the weird trending topics, most important thing, there's some weird meme about some lady doing oral sex and spitting on a dude's penis. That's a big thing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all in the place. I mean, that has nothing to do with anything, but it's just, that's what's on social media. But why doesn't it make sense that there's literally proof multiple times? We've talked about, the double slit experiment, that light behaves differently when you observe it than when you're not observing it. That alone is why. How can we go to sleep at night knowing that's true? it's like, I mean, why isn't that the point? I mean, if you think about it, it's not like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. It's a gigantic deal because light being observed performs differently. It's so what's the light thinking? How the light, oh, well, I'm being observed, so let's do this. It's just, so within all that, what I'm fascinated about all that, and the quantum entanglement, you and I've talked a lot about how energy exchanges, how you're being observed, what you're expecting, everything from medicine to researching, the various pharmaceuticals. When you observe something and are expecting a certain result, quantum theory, it really affects so much more than we realize. And I am fascinated by it. Every day I'm doing some research or study on stuff. And even though I act like I'm, baffled by it, I am baffled by it. I love it. And that sort of supports that chaos theory in my mind that, we don't really know what's going on. And it really sort of supports, my belief system entirely, that all of this we know so much less than we think we know. It's just such a tiny, tiny bit. And when some of these crazy new twists and turns come up, you're like, is that even real? Is that, and it is. And I love the discussion of it. I love to be teachable. I love to be constantly learning. And quantum theory, I believe, is something, and I won't quit studying it, but I will never learn it. I think the information we get, we're just getting information as it comes in. When you and I first started talking about the law of attraction in 2012 or 13, whatever that was,
right.
We kept saying, we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really understand it. We believe it. And, over the years, I don't claim to have it all down perfectly. I feel very confident in my understanding of the workings and how I use the law of attraction in my life. Very confident. I hope one day that I can say, hey, I really understand quantum theory, but I'm not sure I'm going to get there.
Not sure you're going to get there. Well, that's fair. I get that. Yeah. Actually, what's interesting from my perspective, for my own growth in this matter, in my own willingness to accept the unacceptable, is that I'm actually finding that my belief in consciousness is increasing.
Yes.
I mean, like exponentially increasing. It kind of like understates it. It underplays it.
Yeah.
It's increasing massively on a day-to-day basis.
Well, yes, because it's this, when you understand this, or when you try to understand it, you see the pieces of it, you're realizing there's a force at play that we can't really quantify. We don't know what that force is. We don't know.
Pisses scientists off, by the way.
Which it angry, yeah, because they want to know a direct cause. Anytime there's ever like a major virus or some new disease, eventually they'll figure out what it's from, where it's from, how to work, either treat it or at least deal with it. Where with this, there's just no rhyme or reason to it, and it almost as if there's a force behaving totally contrary to what we believe. Because traditional physics, like I heard one guy, a neuroscientist, say, anybody that says you violated the law of physics, you misunderstood the laws of physics. You can't violate the laws of physics. And then quantum theory comes along and goes, well, I mean, you can, but maybe it wasn't the law of physics. And it's literally the law of physics works. It makes sense. Scientists are very confident in their model of traditional physics. And then quantum physics come along. They're like, okay, it's really hard to admit we're wrong here, or there could be a variable, and which then takes me to everything that we believe in life. When if you say this could never happen, or people with terminal illness are believing they have terminal illness, but yet there's always these outliers that somehow survive or overcome or heal themselves completely, or some event happens to heal them, and they just tend to dismiss that versus the idea that why don't we get more on board with that concept? Just like I've talked multiple times about Sir Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile for the first time ever, and then within a few months, multiple people broke it. Now there's high schoolers breaking it. Right. Another event that happened 25 years ago yesterday, and I was watching ESPN as always. I know that Tony Hawk did an incredible move. It's like a 900 2.5 circle at the top of it, and hit it. It took him 11 tries at the X Games. And it just was considered an undoable trick. So that it's 2.5 times around. Skateboarding is not a traditional thing, but everybody sort of knows of that in the background. And for skateboarders, that was an epic night.
Right. And
there's this like 12-year-old kid that did the first back-to-back 900, a 12-year-old kid. And there's some girl that like last year did a 1200.
Oh my God.
So but a 900 was undoable until Tony Hawk did it. Now young kids are doing it at skate parks, and now you're seeing this other thing. So the belief that something happens influences your ability to do it. If it's ever happened, if anybody's ever been cured for even one time from any, like stage 4 liver cancer, which is considered one of the worst, but somebody that's ever been cured from that tells me it can be cured, even though they say it can't be cured. So why I believe in the value of understanding quantum physics even more is it can take our belief that there's nothing guaranteed in either direction. You can simply say, I believe this could happen, and no matter what, there's a possibility that it could, and quantum theory sort of supports the impossible.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I would even go so far as to say that you made reference to medicine. Quantum theory has basically taken me to a point now where, with all the outliers, I love the word outliers that are out there, I've lost a lot of faith in medicine because of it, because medicine is so unwilling to look at outliers.
Yes.
And
yes.
One of the cool things about this whole concept of the quantum mechanics is that your belief, what you expect, whether or not you're giving attention, directly impacts whatever the result is going to be. Well, then everything becomes an outlier.
Yes.
So what we really need to be studying is outliers, because it turns out in the final analysis, outliers really aren't all that far out.
Well, they're not. And I find it interesting. We've talked on this before, mainly the pharmaceutical companies. They tried desperately to remove the outliers.
Oh, yeah.
So you can get, people that are susceptible to the placebo effect, they try to get rid of those. I consider those the outliers. And that way they can keep their medicines in the way they want. And I'm not trying to make all this like evil conspiracy theory. I'm just simply saying that when you dismiss the possibility of belief, dismiss the possibility of, what Dr. Joe Dispenza it talks a lot about, healing yourself with thought.
Mhm.
He healed his back that was unhealable. And, he's believed this for a long time. I heard him on a podcast the other day say he never really understood that what he's talking about is quantum theory in a lot of ways. And it just something that he put together recently as far as like, wow, he's a very smart man. He said, this is way over my head, but the stuff that I'm understanding suggests what happened to me and other people that do this is much more accessible than we realize. And when you really believe that something is going to be a certain way, either positive or negatively, as we know, the law of attraction delivers that. Mm-hmm. And that sort of, when I got so fascinated with understanding this is, I've always, I can speak for me personally, and you've heard me say this before, without hesitation, and I say this, I'm not selling anything to anybody. The law of attraction is real and has worked for me. It has changed my life in the greatest way possible in all areas of my life. It's an amazing concept. Mm-hmm. So I don't doubt it. It's that real for me. And my body and my mind and my environment responds to that belief. I just am able to do that. And that hasn't remotely been the case. This has been building up over the years. Like I said, in 2012 or 13, you and I started talking about this, and it was a concept that I liked, but I didn't really fully understand it. And I'm not saying I fully understand it now, but I have zero doubt in how it works. Mm. And so when I run across things that support that, because even when I would talk to doctors or scientists about why this, and they would always say, well, yeah, maybe this, that, or the other, but they would always get back to, but there's no way to quantify it or proof. And I think quantum theory begins to do it.
Yeah, I'd say we're actually past begins.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is I've been paying a lot of attention to various pieces of information you can find out there. I subscribed to Gaia for the first time. I kind of put that off for the longest time, but I said, okay, I'm kind of tired of what the other networks are offering. Let's see what the Gaia channel has to offer. And there's a lot of good stuff, including there's a Joe Dispenza series called Rewired on there.
Really good.
Really good. That goes into a tremendous amount of detail about it. But I've also been checking out some of the other stuff there and just picking up information from a variety of different places. One thing I was literally watching it a half hour before we started doing the podcast today. It's a series that was done by a woman named Carolyn Corey. And in the series, she is investigating a wide range of these quantum type experiences, particularly with a view toward what happens when you apply psychic phenomena, and how does quantum entanglement play a role in all of that. And in her first episode, she interviews a gentleman named Paul Smith, formerly Major Paul Smith of the CIA, who was involved in what is known as the remote viewing program.
Yes,
the CIA was involved in for many decades. They finally did declassify it, and they declassified it in a way that was designed to suggest that the whole thing was a failure. And Smith was actually seen on camera laughing at that, saying like they're trying to pretend that there were not reams of documentation of people who were able to do this thing. And he was one of them. He literally wrote the manual on how you do this.
and in fact, was it President Carter that President Carter literally admitted it. Mm-hmm. And President Carter not that I have a lot of faith in our presidents, especially recently, but President Carter was, whether you liked him or not, most people agreed he was a man of honor, and he would not lie. I mean, he was just sort of matter of factly goes, yeah, that helped. Mm-hmm. You know, and so and there's a lot of that. The if you research the law of attraction in CIA, I think it was 1992, they did a report
like that, right?
It really gets into it. It doesn't dismiss it. It says there's phenomena here. There's they don't give a lot of opinion on it, but it does talk about it, and it was enough for the CIA to investigate. And there's people that did the investigation, similar to what Miss Mr. Smith was saying that no, it was, they downplayed it because it was sort of scary, but they had a lot of evidence. Now there's some quackery out there, of course,
Sure.
with some of this stuff, but when it comes to that, the remote viewing, they like that. They did a lot of good. The idea that healing, when you pray for somebody, even at a distance, they can heal. There's a lot of stuff that they looked at that the government doesn't like to really get into that kind of thing, but they certainly cared enough about research. And also there's a lot of evidence, not the most popular figure in history, but Hitler was a big believer in a lot of this stuff. He very much believed in a lot of that. Again, I'm not seeking his endorsement to support my theory, but it is.
Don't need to, fortunately, otherwise you'd be in trouble.
yeah, exactly. No, I mean, there's nothing good about the guy, but my point is, it has not. There's people that have definitely believed in it, used it, looked at it, and so that's what I think quantum theory is giving us right now, is sort of gateways to this. And I was listening to several podcasts over the last month or two on this, and I love to hear people debate, the two sides debate. And it is, you talk about brilliant minds, but one guy in this debate, he was going back and forth and about traditional physics and this, that, and the other, and the guy basically, the quantum physics, the one that's sort of supporting that theory, the guy said, so how do you explain the double slit experiment, the most basic quantum theory there is? And he goes, silence for like 10 seconds. He goes, I can't.
Honestly.
And he goes, I can't. And he said, and to be fair, if I want to be honest in reporting, he said, I thought it was a flawed test. And we have done the test at whatever university he's with. Right. And he said, I can report it's exactly like they said.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I love what you said, by the way, about people who are quacks, not quacks, but fraudsters trying to deceive people. I like that because it's kind of amusing. And the reason it's amusing is that this Major Paul Smith made the comment that it's not like only certain people can learn this. That's one of the things that when the CIA declassified this stuff, they kind of left the hint there that only a few people are able to do this. He says, everyone can do this. This is a universal ability that everyone has. So the idea that there are people who are engaging in quack type behavior, trying to deceive people, is laughable because they don't even have to do that. They can learn how to apply this stuff without having to be a quack.
Of course. And today, actually, I had an interesting thing happen today. And in fact, most days I have interesting things happen, as you know. But today in particular, I had a client that I had worked with. She lived in California, and I worked with her probably 10 years ago when she was 21.
Okay.
And, we had a successful, she was successful. Obviously, you're not going to work with somebody for 10 years. So she moved on. She was doing good when she left. So about 4 days ago, I don't know why she popped into my mind.
Okay.
Just randomly. And I'm like, because, you remember, I wonder whatever happened to her, because she's a really smart young lady. She was very teachable. I just remember really good things about her. So that popped in my brain, popped out. And to be fair, I think about clients a lot, occasionally. I used to see, but today I get a text message from this young lady. And she said, hey, I just want to check in. You still doing, therapy, counseling, coaching? I said, of course. And she said, well, things have been great overall, but I got some, little off track. It's been 10 years since we talked. Can we get together? I said, absolutely. We set an appointment. And I'm what is that at play that just a few days ago, I thought about it very specifically. And it's like, wow, that happens more than, one could imagine. It's not just clients, but, friends or somebody. I've thought about it. This worked in a little more dark manner. I was wondering, when I lived in South Carolina, I had some really good friends, and I said, I haven't heard from them in years. And 2 or 3 days later, somebody that we were friends knew said, "Yeah, I just want to let you know this person passed away a week ago."
Hmm.
I'm like, "Oh no!" And then it really, that's like the day that I thought about him. So that was
Ah,
some, yeah, there's some stuff going on at play, and I don't claim to know all the details, but what I love about, again, discussing quantum theory and bringing it to the table, it's there's a lot more going on than we realize, and that some people get frustrated or frightened by that, and I'm super excited about whatever this is.
me too. Me
Yeah,
too. Yeah, I think it's actually fun.
yeah,
Um,
it's a blast.
I actually feel a little bit sorry for people who are terrified by it, because what I've realized is that those people are basically cutting only themselves off.
Yes,
I mean, there are many people who buy into, various kinds of conspiracy theories. I mean, I could certainly have, if I wanted to, I could have created conspiracy theories out of this special that I saw with the major from the CIA, because among other things, they demonstrated on camera. They had the woman who runs the program, Carolyn, brought in a friend who is very much into mind over body, kind of mind over matter kind of things, to meet this guy. And they created an experiment on the spot where Carolyn would go off someplace in the local area without telling the other two where she was going. And then Paul and this other woman would work together. And the other woman, who had never done this before, was going to be the one who was going to be the remote viewer. And she was going to just try to pick up whatever she could pick up about what Carolyn was doing. So the camera follows Carolyn as she goes off, and she comes to this one area where there are some brick buildings around, and there's a merry-go-round, and there's a whole bunch of things that she interacts with. And meanwhile, you watch Paul coaxing the woman into trying to write down whatever comes to her mind. She starts identifying colors and shapes and so forth that match what's going on in that background. And then at the very end, Carolyn says to the camera, "I'm going to throw an experiment into the experiment. I'm going to try to block her." So for the last few minutes, she tries to block her so that the other woman can't read what's going on. So they get back together again, and Carolyn leads them through wherever, what she was doing, and Paul and the other woman, well, Paul is not surprised at all, but the other woman is blown away at how accurate her stuff was. And then she mentions that she gets to a point where she stopped getting information, which was the moment that Carolyn said, "I'm going to block you." Now, I could, if I went into a conspiracy theory mode, I could say, "Oh my God, so there's perfect evidence that the CIA and the other spy agencies around the world are blocking each other, and they're reading each other, and there's all this, psychic warfare going on and so forth." And that's not the way I see it at all. I see, like, wow, this is pretty cool stuff.
yeah, and it doesn't scare me.
No.
If it exists, it exists. I'm just more fascinated about it. I'm just more fascinated about the concept, the remote. I have connections with people that you have instinct, you have feelings, you have gut feelings, just about things, and it's like there's a connection that I'm not always tuned into, but I can sense things, as particularly people that I'm close to and connected to. And I've never tried to hone that or look into it too much. Of course, my wacky ADHD brain can't focus on anything long enough to do that. But it's again, all of this is leading full circle to the stuff that is fundamental for me, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and that's true. I think probably the reason why I'm feeling so comfortable about it is I've become very comfortable with the idea that consciousness created everything. I came to that conclusion before I acquired the information that quantum mechanics and modern science have delivered to us. I came to it because of the shows that I've been doing here. I've been talking to various woo-woo personalities for quite some time now, and gotten a lot of very interesting information out of them. Plus also the teachings of Abraham Hicks helped me a lot with understanding all this kind of thing. And so that gave me enough of a background to really believe that consciousness is at the root of everything. Everything is based on thought and so on and so forth, even though that was a very woo-woo concept 12 years ago when you and I first started doing the show. Today, it's not even considered woo. It's not even half woo anymore.
Yeah. It's like,
everybody else, it's like everybody came along for the ride or something. It's kind of a wild thing. But at the same time, there's also still a lot of fear associated with it. So when I look at those two things in combination, the conclusion I come to is This thing is expanding so fast, it's unraveling so fast, it's unwinding so fast that even if somebody wanted to turn it into a conspiracy theory, it wouldn't work because there'd be too much new data coming in.
Yes.
Yeah, conspiracy theories are very dependent upon large amounts of information being missing. That's the gap within which a conspiracy theory gets constructed. But the moment you introduce new data is the moment that the conspiracy theory falls apart, and now the theorist has to come up with a new conspiracy theory if he wants to keep it going.
Right.
So if that's the case, then at the rate things are unraveling right now, it would be literally impossible for someone to push a conspiracy theory about quantum mechanics because it's unraveling too quickly. There's too much information coming out.
Yeah, you can't keep up, and even within the proven experiments that there was one the other day I posted that I watched it 3 times. I watched this video 3 times, and I said I just have to stop because it was the circle. It made I couldn't remotely connect the dots, even though they were connecting it for me. It made no sense, and I was like. So there's no way to make a conspiracy theory out of it because it's just so, and last night I watched a movie and it was on Prime, Amazon Prime, and it was called Predestination with Ethan Hawke.
Okay.
And it's sort of a time travel theory kind of movie. And it was this, I'm not going to run the movie. I watched it. It's a good movie. I think it was a good movie. It's one of those you watch it, and you're going, did I like that or not? Because the ending was so, it was like, oh, wait a minute. And so but the basic theory of, sort of the paradox of time travel and, being able to go back and meet yourself and what that would do. And, you can, they were suggesting that there was this loop that this, apparently a group of people were stuck in the same loop. And when the movie was over, you realize, maybe it wasn't a group of people. Maybe it was just one person. And it was just so fascinating to watch. And it just gets you thinking. And so I believe you can get to a place where everything is it's almost in the, do we get to a place like at the end of the first Matrix movie where you see everything in code and you're realizing, wait a minute, I see through all of this right now. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're going to get there in my lifetime, but that's sort of the end game. And all of a sudden you hear this big sort of Windows sound, like the software code go, simulation ending, or is that going to be the end of all this? And, is all this taking place right in front of me? Am I the only one involved? Are you the only one involved? I don't know.
Well, somehow I don't think it ends in a blue screen of death, so I think we're probably safe on that one.
We're probably safe there. So, but what it does, what more than anything, and I talk to. It's hard to talk to adults about this stuff because of their preset mindset. But I mean, I've had some great quantum theory conversations with 14-year-olds because they're super smart, but yet they're able to, and so when you explain it and they're open to any concept. So, they can, I have kids, young men and young women sending me quantum theory things from TikTok. And I'm like, this is wild. Cause once you understand, once you get this, there's really, that's sort of the ultimate knowledge, at least at this point. There might be another level if we get to this. I don't know.
I'll tell you what. I mean, you mentioned how adults can be more challenging, and I do agree with you. They can be, but I think we've kind of reached a tipping point. The tipping point that I'm referring to is the one where the amount of evidence that is coming out is so overwhelming that adults are confused now. I mean, you were expressing earlier your own confusion about how you try to grapple with this stuff, but you're also a lot more savvy than most people are because not only do you have the confusion, but you also have awareness and understanding of some of the other stuff that goes along with it. So you can make some sense out of it. There are a lot of people who can't make any sense out of it. And I think what's happening right now is there are people who are like the ultimate skeptics where all this stuff is concerned. And if you ask them about this, they don't, 20 years ago, they would have given you a hard fight about it. Now they'll just kind of back off, like I can't answer that one. That's not what they'll say, but because they don't know where to go with it. No. All of the rules are gone. All of the old structures that they know don't work anymore.
Yes.
And so it's like they're all floating at sea, like, well, let's change the subject because I don't know what to do with that.
Right. That's sort of the concept that, you're looking at here, that people like to feel they're sort of have mastered, a concept, or we feel comfortable with that. And when I'm very comfortable, as you know, in the concept of learning and failing and getting it wrong. And
Oh, yeah.
I sort of thrive on that belief of, hey, I do it till my way of learning is failing. I have failed my way to success. And I don't view that as a negative whatsoever.
No.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, failure is not an option." I'll hear that a lot, and I'm going, "It was for me. It was a lot of. I mean, it was my go-to option for a long time, and I still like to get in there, and I can be wrong with it. I've had discussions with, and what I love is when, particularly some of these, I know a lot of brilliant people, and when brilliant people can step back from their egos and really have honest discussions, I love the potentials and what could it recommend. I had a group of guys, we got together, and it sort of turned into like a mastermind meeting, but not intentionally. And we were talking about just the possibilities. And when, you get 5 people that are into this concept, you start talking about what this could really mean and what level. And,
right.
And I do believe, there's a possibility here. I'm going to float a conspiracy theory out there a little bit.
Okay.
That the government, I can imagine that the government's not really excited about the average person getting all this knowledge, because
I think it's true.
It undermines everything. It undermines the concept of like, look, this is how things are operating. And, when you can say, no, that's not how it works. I think the government has sort of lost control of information, and part of the problem that scares them, because you're armed with information, they don't get to tell you what things are. I have my neighbor kid that I'm so close to. We went to a thing the other day, and we were driving, and we were talking. He always has these cool conversations he wants to have, and he wanted to talk about the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
So he said, we read about that. He said, "Were you alive?" And I go, I think I was, but it wasn't coherent. I was like 6 months old or something. I said, "Have you seen the Zapruder film?" And he pulled it up on his phone, and I said, "So without any commentary, just walk through what happened." And he's going in, and he looked at it, and he goes, "Well, he leans forward, he grabs his neck, and then he gets shot in the front of the head." And I go, "Why do you say that?" And he goes, "Well, his head's thrown back." And he said, "Why is his wife climbing on the back of the car?" And I said, "Well, she's actually going to recover a piece of the skull. It was very, she was traumatized." And he goes, "Okay, well, so he got shot from the back and the front." And I go, "Okay." I said, "What if I told you the government told us he only got shot from the back?" And he goes, "Well, they would be lying." And I go, "Well, why?" Because, well, you literally see him get shot. You see his head explode from the back. And so, I mean, if you ever wonder if there's a conspiracy theory of possible, it's like, okay, watch that film and see if it's believable what they tell you. It's not.
But the thing that I love about this conversation here is that it really illustrates that no matter how much of this information we get, the human mind's ability to create scenarios overwhelms all of it.
Yes.
Which makes sense, because if what we were saying is true, and I do believe it is true, that this entire universe is consciously created. It is based in consciousness. Consciousness is the primordial thing at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. If consciousness is at the top of the pyramid, and if we are all conscious, I think both of those statements are true. Absolutely. I'll even add in a third statement that becomes controversial, that everything is conscious. All right, well, if all this consciousness is going on, then of course there's going to be an endless amount of creation going on. And it's going to be including conspiracy theories, non-conspiracy theories, laughing at conspiracy theories, crying about conspiracy. I mean, and that's just like a little tiny corner of it. That's just the conspiracy theory corner, not to mention the rest of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what this whole conversation is about how all of what we understand about life is being impacted by the fact that we are all quantumly connected.
Absolutely. And there's an episode of the old original Star Trek series. And big fan of Star Trek for many, many years, all the variations. And the this is the one back in 1968, 69 time,
The
and I
really
was
early episodes, yeah.
yeah, my mom used to be freaked out because I was a little kid watching these shows, and I was fascinated by them. And the one that I remember them all, but the one that stood out is they land on this planet, and all these random things started happening. Captain
Oh yeah,
Kirk's childhood horse showed up, and this knight shows up and kills one of the crew members,
right.
and they realized their thoughts were creating reality,
Yeah,
and it was great. And then, of course, on this planet, it was, they were fixing, they killed the guy, but he really wasn't dead, and
right.
they did all that, but they realized that, wait, our thoughts are creating this reality.
Yeah.
And I can remember as a kid watching that going, what if that's real life? And as an adult, I'm asking, what if that's real life?
Mm.
Same thing. It's
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, because I do believe that. I think all this is creative. And when you notice the trends, again, law of attraction concepts or whatever, the idea that, like war is escalating, the economy and all the stuff that's going on is because the attention that is paid to it.
Yes.
The attention that's given to it, the attention, the focus that, again, the other, I'm always, somebody asked me the other day, so how much do you pay for gas today? And I go, I have no idea. And he goes,
Clearly, it's at the top of your list of priorities.
Yeah, I go, I don't know. And he goes, well, how much? What? I said, I don't know. I just put the credit card thing in there. When it clicks, it's full, and I leave. I don't know what it costs. It doesn't matter because I needed the gas. It's just not a thing, But yet the idea that we're all focused on this, we're all focused on that, and it has this uncanny way of coming about, and also then randomly, we've mentioned this before. I don't know how many times in my life that I got the message as a young child, particularly, in the Southern Baptist churches, which I'm in recovery from that religion. They were very from the pulpit, preacher. When I was a kid, I was expecting Armageddon every week.
Sure.
Every week. There was some news story that, hey, this is what Revelation says, and it's about to happen. I can remember, really telling my friends, look, we're not ever going to make it to 14 because of this. And it's and all these years later, we somehow wiggle out of it. We end up, coming out. I have never seen Armageddon, shockingly, and but I've been told Armageddon was around the corner 50 times in my life.
Yeah. So, which raises a very interesting point. The interesting point is you didn't believe it.
No.
That seems like a minor point, perhaps, from one person's point of view, but from my point of view, that's the point of view. You didn't believe it, and your belief is playing a direct role in your experience, and everyone else's belief is playing a direct role in their experience.
I did not. Here's some things I didn't believe. I did not, and I haven't believed this. I don't believe the economy is bad right now. In fact, I've had an incredible 6 months financially. Wow. I just wow, that just keeps happening. And it's been great for me. Economy's not bad for me. I don't believe the economy's bad. Not to open up a can of worms, I never believed COVID was a problem for me. I'm not saying it wasn't a problem. I never believed it was a problem for me. Or any virus is a problem for me. My body has the ability to build up immunity and do that. Again, speaking for me,
Sure.
I'm not saying other people with immune compromises. This isn't everybody, but it's, I have these beliefs, and they pretty much play out in my life. I have a belief. My biggest conspiracy theory is the deck is stacked in my favor.
Which is a wonderful belief to have, by the way.
It is. And it plays out that way.
Which makes it very powerful too.
Yeah.
This also really beautifully illustrates how, we live now in a time where it's generally perceived that we have massive division going on in society, political division. There's also what you might call an entertainment division or a news division, or there's all these divisive pieces going on. And people some people are actually freaking out about it. Other people are less freaked, but they're keeping their eye on it, and so on and so forth. The thing that gets my attention is we have all of these competing beliefs, and I use that word advisedly, competing. They aren't really in competition, but I use it to describe the fact that it seems to be a situation where there would be competition, and yet the beliefs all seem to exist within the same continuum. That for most people, that's an impossibility. For me, that's like, well, that's how quantum physics works. That's how consciousness works.
Yes.
So therefore, I don't need to be worried about whether or not this person's belief is different from my belief, because
At all.
the universe accepts both. They
Yes.
work together. They don't even have to be complementary in any way. They,
No.
they can be completely at odds with each other, and they still work in the same space
Absolutely.
at the same time.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. It's also, for me, that's where I get my sense of everything's okay. Because if all those beliefs can work at the same time, and this is the other part that makes it really easy for me, if the belief that you're following, the thought pattern that you're following influences you and causes things to happen in your life, and the things that I believe in and that I think about and give attention to are what influence what goes on in my life. And if those things are incompatible with each other, then what happens? Well, what happens is you experience stuff that's related to the stuff you think about. I experience stuff that's related to the stuff I think about. I'm not affected by the things you think about. You're not affected by the things that I think about, unless we choose to be. Unless we choose to be on
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, shoot, how much more power do we need?
That's what makes life so amazing when you realize that, and you can tune into that. I was at a Wawa the other day getting gas again, and
not paying attention to the price.
not remotely paying. And so the guy on the pump right beside me, he's got this truck, and clearly he was leaning to the right, strong in his belief system.
Okay.
And nothing wrong with that. But he goes, I don't know what we're going to do if Biden's get elected again. And I said, I'm going to make a lot more money no matter who's elected again. And he's like, he looked at me like I was crazy. And I go, because I don't think either one of them matters. It's what I believe that matters. No. And he goes, you're a little naive. And I go, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am. I have no argument with that. I am. And he just shut up. But it was this idea. He's walking in a world where his world's falling apart. So it is for him. That's the part. That's the part that we miss. Right. If you believe your life sucks and the world's falling apart around you, it's accurate.
Yes,
it really is. So we can't dismiss that in the sense but while simultaneously, I'm in the gym every day. I feel fantastic. I told you I have a career I love. I have great people around me. I have unlimited possibilities. I believe all of that. And it plays out in real time for me as the people that believe we're on the edge of everything falling apart. I can't make ends meet. I can't do that. They're accurate too. Because that's the reality.
And that's the part that blows people's minds. How can both be true at the same time?
Yes. And that's sort of your point is that we have, it isn't competing, as you said, it's just differing views. We have different realities with the same space. It's like, when you view something, your perspective and your background, there's so many factors in how you see that. I can look at something you look at and you go, I'm like, I don't, that's not my thing. I've used this example before. I have a lot of friends that are believers in the power of crystals.
Yes.
And so I've multiple, anytime they want to talk to me about it, they'll go, do you believe in this? And I go, look, before I say this, it works for you. It really does. So I know it works for you because you say it works for you.
Right.
I don't believe they're not. All I believe is they're just some really pretty rocks, and they don't work for me. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean they don't work for you. I'm not discounting their power because it's never been about the rocks. It was about their belief in the rocks, and that's the thing. So it's just, it seems nuanced, but it really, that's why I never want to talk somebody out of something that works for them. I never want to talk somebody out of a religion that works for them. And this will ruffle some therapist feathers. You're familiar with the term EMDR. It's a trauma treatment.
I've heard of it. I can't say I'm really versed in it.
In a nutshell, there's this theory that there's rapid eye movement mimics while you're sleeping, and that's when you process traumas. So a therapist developed this tool called EMDR, where you discuss what's going on, problems, get into it. And they use this, you move your eyes back and forth as she's working with it. It's been documented as a very effective way to deal with trauma.
Okay.
It's really gets into it. The person that really the developer, the group of people that develop this, believe it unconditionally. So when you go get trained in it, the therapist believes it with all their heart, and it works. It does work, and they approve. So when you go see the therapist and they believe with all their heart, they tell you about it, and you see how it's working for you, it's working. Well, my mentor, Dr. Master, he's a psychiatrist that passed away several years ago. His theory, long before we were talking about this kind of stuff, I go, what about this EMDR? Is moving your eyes back and forth? He said, Joel, it works because the people believe it works, and the therapist, they believe in their therapist, so it works. He said, if you were going to pick boogers and flick them up against the wall, and that was convince you that's a therapy, it would work. So,
but you have to believe it.
You have to believe it, and so I'm not minimalizing the people that believe in EMDR. I don't want to plant the seed that it doesn't work. But whatever you're going to really believe in, you're going to believe in. It's going to work. The Harvard study that asked medical students about the effect they tested acupuncture's efficiency or effectiveness with medical students at Harvard, all with a negative bias toward tradition for Eastern medicine. They all reported it had no effect on them at all. They concluded that acupuncture was useless in their study.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, acupuncture has been used for thousands of years. I know people that's all they believe in.
Yeah.
It's it's like, and again, when people say, does it work? I go, if you believe it works, it will work. And they go, well, what about the meridians and the energy? And I go, it's all part of the process of believing. If you believe it works, it will work. And that's where quantum theory starts supporting a lot of these things that we've always argued about. So it's not so simple as, well, this does this. It's, one of the disclaimers on most antidepressants, when you read the warning labels, it says, we do not know how this medication works. Here's what we think happens. They literally say that. Here's what we think happened, or here's our theory of what happens.
Right.
They don't know. They say, well, I mean, in theory, if you raise your serotonin, fingers crossed, it'll help your depression. That if you believe it, it might help. If you have a lack of serotonin, it definitely would help. But if you don't believe in it at all, years ago, early in my recovery, I saw a psychiatrist, and he tried me on 2 or 3 different, some anti-anxiety stuff that didn't work, and some antidepressants. And I remember with the antidepressants, I literally told him, I said, I don't believe there's anything in the pill. It didn't do anything. It had the side effects. I had no side effects. I had no improvement. It didn't affect my sleep. There's nothing that it affected. I'm not sure it was even real.
There's
and
the key line right there.
Yeah. And so I never believed in that stuff because I didn't believe I had a lack of serotonin. I literally screwed up my life. I lost everything. I ended up in jail for my gambling addiction. I think that's probably key to the situation there. It's not a lack of serotonin that did that to me. It was me screwing up my life through addictive behavior. And until I got a handle on that, all the king's horses and all the Prozac in the world was not going to change that.
Prozac in the world, yes. my kingdom for all the Prozac.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to me, what you're really doing is you're bringing up the most important issue of all. Because for me, the most important issue is, all right, we're dealing with this world of quantum mechanics, of consciousness, all the things we've been talking about. And we're dealing with it on a daily basis. I mean, there's small pieces of time where you and I are talking about it here on the podcast, but the rest of the time we're actually just dealing with the 3D portion.
Yes.
When I'm dealing with that 3D portion, I now understand that my mission is pretty simple. It's to identify, what do I already believe? What do I already have some willingness to believe? And what am I resistant to believing? Yeah. Because until I can identify those things, I can't identify where I can grow.
Absolutely.
I have to have some idea which direction to grow in. And if I don't know which direction to grow in, I don't know where I need to take my step next in order to make the improvements I want to make. So my biggest thing whenever I'm dealing with anything new that I've seen on television, anything I've talked about here on the show, anything that I've read, anything that I've encountered talking to other people, is to ask myself this question: can I see myself believing this in my life? Not in somebody else's life, not whether or not the person I'm talking to believes it. Can I see myself believing this?
Yes.
If I can, then it's worth exploring for me. If I can't, then I'm not ready for it. So I might as well put it aside for now.
Yes. And that's, I love how you frame that, because I will often tell when somebody says, well, Joel, the law of attraction doesn't work. I go, it doesn't for you because you don't believe it works. And it doesn't, because it's working, but not in the way they think it should be working. And yeah, for me, I approach everything with, okay, we'll figure this out. Whatever's going on. I have a lot of evidence that things work out in my favor, as I said. So I believe that even if something seems to be going not well, it always works out in my favor. And I believe that. And so that will continue to happen. And it's this, you gain momentum with that. And within this cycle that we get stuck in of, the many people get stuck in that negative thinking pattern, or the belief that everything's falling apart, or whatever that goes on. You're punishing yourself with these thoughts, and you don't realize you have the key to this by changing this. Because what the most simple statement, other than, I told you the double slit experiment should be top billing every day of forever. But beyond that, when you realize your perspective dictates your reality, and you're in control of your perspective, which by default makes you in control of your reality, that's the most fundamental, empowering statement that can be made that is often overlooked. Your perspective creates your reality. Yeah. You and you alone are in charge of your perspective. That's amazing.
It's not only amazing, it becomes critical.
Yes. And to me, that there's really nothing else that matters other than that. When right. And then things tend to happen within that, the momentum gains when you don't, I have at the end of my street, there's a stoplight. And if you want to turn left, it takes forever. It just, oh Lord. And it's not well timed. And then if you take a right, about a half mile down the road, there's another light. So I had this time where it seemed like 4 or 5 times a day, or multiple times in a week, I would go to my light, take a right, and immediately get stopped by that other light. Mm-hmm. And I started anticipating that to happen. And and then it just like became self-fulfilling, right. It was like, and so I started working on changing that perspective. I said, I'm not going to do this. So one day I had I'm just, I want to hit it. I want to hit it green this time. We'll turn right, hit it green, go. I did. It was great. Went through. And then it's like, okay, I started thinking about that, and I caught it. And then, of course, it doesn't happen every single time. I lose interest in those kind of things once I sort of satisfied a little bit. But it was right. Yeah. But you when you put it out there, you're giving energy to it. You're giving that concept to it. And so when the energy attraction that we have between people, quantum theory sort of supports. It isn't just quantum theory it isn't just energy attracting between people. It's energy attracting everything, because everything is energy. I'm looking at the wall over here. The wall is energy. The wall is, it's really a bunch of atoms. It seems to be solid, but it's mostly empty space within the atom, but it has energy. And once you realize everything has energy, then you can attract anything, that whether you're tuning into health, whether you're turning into financial well-being, whether you're turning into life satisfaction or partners or whatever you're looking at, your perspective will draw that. And that's so empowering when you realize that.
There's one last concept. I love that, by the way. There's one last concept I want to bring in here before we run out of time, because it's something that has been, I won't say weighing on me, but it has been something I've been aware of and wanting to resolve in my own thinking for quite some time, which is all right, if I'm understanding and appreciating all of the stuff that I'm talking about here, that we're talking about here, how am I going to anticipate, let's put it that way, how am I going to anticipate science coming to grips with it? And well, first thing I've discovered is that everything that I thought was going to happen that way turns out to be wrong, because science has come to grips with it in ways that far exceeded anything I had in mind.
Mhm.
But to the degree that it's still doing so, I asked myself, okay, what's going to happen? And for the longest time, I thought there had to be another form of energy, not electromagnetic energy, but another kind of energy that we would often call spirit. That was the energy that was behind quantum mechanics. It was the energy that was in the empty space energy kind of stuff, the one that science hasn't been able to detect yet. I realized today, science has already detected it. They just haven't been able to measure it yet. They haven't been able to put it on a graph, or hold up a device and with a wand on, and the device with the wand can actually pick this energy up. But they have found it, because science is now talking about consciousness.
Yeah.
And
Well,
wait. Science is talking about consciousness, but yeah, they are. And that's what's blowing my mind. I mean, I'm seeing physicists talking about consciousness. I'm seeing chemists talking about consciousness, biologists talking about consciousness. I'm seeing it all over the place. And I'm realizing this is it. We're at the point in time in history where science is finally starting to find a way to accept the idea that, yes, there is this other energy in the universe called consciousness, and that it's real, and that they're about ready to find a way to measure it.
And that's going back full circle to the opening statements. Whatever is affecting the light to perform differently when it's observed or not observed, that's consciousness.
Yeah,
that's it. And we don't know how to measure that, but we have proof it exists. And to me, that's the exciting piece of all this, is the consciousness, or a connection, or an energy that we can't measure. We have the dimensions we call, the ones we understand. There's dimensions, I believe, that we don't understand. Consciousness can take place. One of the things that takes place and it's happened to me in a few of my therapeutic psilocybin experiments, is there is almost like fibers or waves when you're in that state. If I'm sitting in my living room and I'm looking at the TV, between me and the TV, there's these energy waves. Now, everybody says, well, you're hallucinating because you're under sight. Whatever you want to do. I believe it opens up the brain where you can see energy that didn't exist before. And it's amazing to see. And it's happened frequently with me. And, I'm not suggesting it, again, I'm not suggesting people do psilocybin experiments of their own. I give those disclaimers all the time, but I have witnessed that myself, and I don't know what that is. And everybody dismisses it. Well, you're tripping, so you're seeing that weird stuff. But it's almost like in the Matrix, where, you're seeing that, code. It's a similar type thing there. So I find it, we're getting there, and we're opening. I just think we're what we're going to find out is going to be just so friggin' amazing. And then artificial intelligence is going to exponentially increase our ability to work on this and discover it and to quantify it.
Yeah. And the message that I would like to send along with that is there's nothing to be afraid of.
Not zero. In fact, it's so fascinating, because how I've sort of approached my day. What is the worst thing possible that can happen to me today? In your mind, any idea?
If I can only answer for myself, I can't answer for you. I don't know how to answer that one. But.
Okay, but in my mind, let's say I'm driving down the road and I get creamed by an 18-wheeler.
Okay.
I just transition to the non-physical. That's the worst that's going to happen today.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm not trying. I don't want that to happen, but. Knowing me, I'm going to be back in about 15 minutes after that happens. Doing it again. But it isn't as serious as we think it is sometimes, and I know there's trauma. I know it's real, but when you really realize there's so much more, and it isn't the 78.5 years we tend to live on the planet, and then we just, there's more than that. And I don't claim to be an expert of how all this works or what goes on. I just know there's more. And for now, that's all I need.
I'll finish up my commentary by quoting Robert Heinlein, who is a science fiction author, was a science fiction author, and at one time was recognized along with Isaac Asimov and people of that generation as being one of the fathers of science fiction. Heinlein has a quote that I love from one of his books. The quote is essentially like this. This is a paraphrase, but it's pretty close. I don't know who's cranking. I'm just pleased that he doesn't stop.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I believe when you transition to the non-physical or maybe in my actual physical lifetime, I don't know, but it's all going to be revealed. It's all there. We have experienced it. We know. And I just think it's the most exciting thing. I love the idea of learning all this. It excites me. It doesn't scare me on any level. There's nothing about this that's frightening to me whatsoever. It's just exciting.
Yeah, and that's a fun place to be in. That's a fun space mentally.
Yeah. Where you know, when we talk about different times, you know, I'll hear people say, well, you know, the 80s were great, or the 50s were great, or the 60s were great. I can't imagine living in a better time. We have so much information and we have so much amazing things going on, the technology and the knowledge. If there are downsides, there's absolutely downsides. We're not handling it all that well all the time. But the access to all this information, we cannot be contained by any religious organization or any government anymore. We can go learn this. We don't need approval. One of the things I have some investment in Bitcoin, not drastic, but a little bit. I've always believed in the concept. The idea that the government they're scared to death of Bitcoin because they can't control it on any level. Even if they made it illegal, they can't control it.
That's true. Yeah,
they can't, and and they don't like anything they can't control, and that scares them. So this is information that some of this information, I do believe that we probably, you know, we may have run across stuff that the government hasn't released, like we're talking about with the remote viewing.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. I don't think they want us to know all that they know.
Oh, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd also remind our MAGA friends, MAGA is Make America Great Again. I'd like to remind them that all of life, the universe, and everything is already great and has been great all along.
It never changed.
It has never changed in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful as usual. Thank you so much, my friend.
Great to talk. I love it. I love it.
I love it when we do this every time, and I look forward to doing it again next week. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.